It is an action-packed week in New York City. World leaders are returning to the United Nations for the General Assembly. The UNGA will be looking to build momentum to reach an ambitious climate agreement. With a focus on boosting efforts to fight the Covid-19 pandemic and seek unity after the Taliban took over Afghanistan, all this in the shadow of high tensions between the United States, China and Russia. As the spread of Covid-19 and the debate over inequitable vaccine rollout still rages, about a third of the 193 UN member states are planning to attend the UNGA virtually. Presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers for the remaining countries are due to travel to the United States. US President Joe Biden will address the assembly in person. This will be Biden's first UN visit since taking office. The United States earlier did try and dissuade leaders from coming to New York in a bid to stop the meet from becoming a super spreader event. Joe Biden will be hosting a virtual meeting from Washington with leaders and chief executives that aims to boost distribution of vaccines globally. A so-called U.S. honor system means that anyone entering the assembly hall effectively declares that they are vaccinated. A proof of vaccination is not required, but this system is set to be broken when the first world leader comes to dais to speak, Jair Bolsonaro. The Brazilian president is a vaccine skeptic. Before the annual speeches begin, the US Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be hosting a closed-door meeting on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Guterres and Johnson will be calling upon world leaders to take concrete action when it comes to tackling the climate crisis. Johnson's visit is also seen as a crucial precursor to the UN COP26 summit in Glasgow in November.
It's only a couple of months now till the COP26 summit, and so we need everybody to focus on what's called their nationally determined contributions. That's the amount of carbon dioxide each country is going to cut. So the $100 billion a year that we need to raise is to support those countries make the transition. But what we're also asking for here at COP is for countries to phase out coal, 2030 for countries that are developed, 2040 for developing countries, and then phase out hydrocarbon internal combustion engine vehicles, cars as well.
Israel's Prime Minister Naftali Bennett will also be making his first appearance at the United Nations. Taliban's swift takeover of Afghanistan and the withdrawal of foreign forces from the country is set to be a major topic of discussion at the UNGA. The foreign ministers of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, the US, Russia, the UK, China and France, are expected to discuss the situation in Afghanistan in a meeting on Wednesday. Russia and China, the veto-wielding members of the Security Council, will not be attending the UNGA in New York. The two countries will not even be sending their foreign ministers. Analysts say it is an attempt by China and Russia to send out a message amid the ongoing standoff with the United States. The French President Emmanuel Macron will not be visiting New York but will be attending the UNGA virtually. The Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi will also be among the no-shows at the gathering. The week will be ending with the leaders of America's closest allies in Asia, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga, and the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison heading to Washington for the first in-person meeting of the Quad bloc. The key meeting is scheduled for Friday. And with us on the broadcast this minute are our correspondents Susan Tehrani with us from New York, Siddhant Sibal from Washington, D.C. and Mandy Clark joining us from London. Coming to you first, Susan, to give us a better sense of the expectations from this crucial week ahead. It's interesting to note here how climate action, dealing with the climate crisis, is no longer something which is being looked at as a separate topic of discussion. It is expected to be dominating the discussions all throughout.
Absolutely. The high-level meeting really kicked off this week, and the theme is building resilience through hope. And this theme, as you mentioned, Molly, throughout your intro, and the question that you posed about climate not being separate from the world that we're living in right now, is really the pandemic, which takes center stage alongside with the climate. And that's what we're really seeing world leaders deliberate on in the week that we're coming ahead, and that's really two parallel challenges: the pandemic, redefining the post-pandemic global economy, and then a healthier planet, which would be climate change. So pandemic, economy, and climate all really going hand in hand, and we see this really in the events that are scheduled and the meetings and debates for the coming weeks, starting off, of course, with the meeting that's being co-chaired by the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres today on climate. What we do know is they will discuss the need to take concrete steps, particularly on supporting developing countries to mitigate the impact of climate change and adapt to its consequences. But they will also talk about how to move forward on climate in a post-pandemic world. So very interlocked together, as you mentioned. Yes.
Indeed. Stay with me, Susan. I'll just come to you, Siddhant and Mandy as well. Just a quick reminder to our viewers of this crucial meeting that is also slated to be held ahead of the general debate at the 76th session of the UNGA. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, is set to meet UK's newly appointed Foreign Minister, Liz Truss. The ministers are expected to evaluate the strategic 2030 roadmap when they meet. The roadmap 2030 is a comprehensive strategic partnership between India and the United Kingdom, which involves a framework for the UK-India relationship over the next 10 years. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his UK counterpart had adopted the pact, remember, to strengthen ties earlier this year and work closely on areas like security, defence, technology, science and climate. Under the pact, the UK will be supporting development of India's indigenous light combat aircraft Mark II. The Taliban's return to Afghanistan will also be a top priority at the meeting. Both the ministers are likely to draw out the strategy on the way forward as global terror threats make a comeback in Kabul. The two ministers are also likely to discuss the issue of migration. London and New Delhi had earlier pledged to make it easier for Indian and British nationals to live and work in each other's countries. The Covid-19 pandemic and vaccines may also dominate the dialogue between the two foreign ministers. The two countries had pledged to firm up international supply chains to ensure that medicines and vaccines reach those in dire need under the roadmap earlier this year. And going back across to our correspondents, coming to you first, Siddhant, to give us a better sense of the expectations that India has from this crucial meeting.
Well, when it comes to the meeting between the Indian External Affairs Minister and the UK counterpart, this is the first meeting. We know the change which has happened in the UK Foreign Ministry. But largely, if you look at India-UK relationship, both have been engaging with each other. The big worry, of course, is when it comes to free movement of people. UK has announced that when it comes to people vaccinated in countries like India, they will be deemed to be considered as unvaccinated. The development just coming just few hours before this crucial bilateral. So this is something that could be dominating the bilateral meeting. But nonetheless, when it comes to UK's pivot to Indo-Pacific, this is a key focus for London. London needs New Delhi for its stakeholdership in Indo-Pacific. We know that when it comes to military engagement, UK has sent its vessels in the Indo-Pacific. They will be, of course, exercising as well with members of the Malabar grouping. They have been doing their exercises in Guam and, of course, in the Bay of Bengal as well. The second part, but largely people-to-people relationship forms the living bridge between the two countries. There is a huge Indian diaspora in UK. They, of course, have been playing a key role in the Boris Johnson government as well, well-known names in the government as well. But largely, if you look at India's focus with EU and with UK is to increase trade ties. We know with both EU and with UK, there are talks of FTA. The resumption of the trade talks is something that is big focus when it comes to conversations with the UK as well.
WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.